I am a police officer in the United States of America, and I've done this job for just under 10 years. Now, every story that I tell you on this channel is my own personal story that I've experienced as a police officer. The first one we're going to talk about is an absolute tragedy, and how something as simple as crossing a road intoxicated destroys not just one, but 2 lives. Now, I work swing shift on patrol, which means my shift starts at 3 p.m. and ends at 1 a.m. The night crew, or graveyards, comes on at 11 and relieves us for the last 2 hours, allowing us to catch up on paperwork. Now, our department, unlike a lot of other departments, puts a lot of work on patrol. They don't just do traffic stops. They don't just respond to calls with disturbances. They also take robberies, burglaries, major assaults, and other felony crimes. So we're completely inundated with paperwork throughout the entire shift. That could include going to get a felony warrant, a search warrant for a house, and anything similar. So I'm driving back to the main station, northbound down a major highway, and I choose to take an exit onto a frontage road so I could head towards the main police station. Now, for some reason, the frontage road was not lit up by streetlights like normal. Instead, it was dark and black, and I had my high beams on. So when I came across a frantic lady waving her arms in the middle of the road, I nearly missed hitting her and slid about 75 feet along the ice, coming to a complete stop. Now, I got out, and this lady, who was about 72 years old, was crying, hysterical, and pointing at the shoulder to a lifeless body. I rushed over to assess the situation, putting on a pair of latex gloves because I could see there was blood in the snow. Now, this woman was screaming behind me that she did everything she could to try to avoid hitting her, that she came out of nowhere and she had no ability to stop. I rolled the female to her back, and I immediately started to assess her medical situation. I got on the radio and I explained to dispatch that I had a vehicle versus pedestrian collision, and that as I was feeling for a pulse and I had none, that I needed Medics Red to respond. Now, Medics Red means that the fire department is going to send medics lights and sirens, whereas if they send them yellow, it means they're at their own pace. So immediately once I find that she doesn't have a pulse, I start CPR. And as I'm doing chest compressions on this lady who was in her late 20s, I could feel that her chest was mush. Now, this is indicative of major trauma to the torso. Normally, when you perform CPR, which I've done probably more than 50 times, you can feel the cartilage breaking underneath each compression. Now, that's not ribs, that's cartilage, but there's a very distinct feeling behind it. Now, it's not abnormal to break a rib during CPR, but there was no resistance at all while performing this session of CPR. I got on the radio and asked the next responding officer to bring their med bag so we could start providing rescue breaths with our bag. And I continued to perform CPR on someone that I knew wasn't going to make it. Now, the old lady was screaming behind my head, and I had to be forceful with her and tell her to get back in her car, which is about 150 feet away. She was upset, crying, and she was disturbing whatever I needed to do. Sometimes it's important to remove distractions, even if it's in a forceful way, even if it's perceived rude. Sometimes it's necessary. Now, like I said, I had a feeling like she wasn't going to make it. I knew, just with the massive amounts of trauma to her upper torso, that there was going to be more internal damage done than what we could really deal with on scene. Now, it took medics about 8 minutes to get there, so I performed multiple sessions of CPR, multiple rounds of 30 and 2, 30 and 2, 30 and 2, until medics finally responded. They got there, they assessed the situation, and they called her dead at the scene. They put a blanket over her, and I made my way back to the vehicle and the lady who had hit her. Now, by this time, there were multiple officers on scene from night shift, and I needed to see if there was anything else that I could do. Now, as I waited behind the lady's vehicle, I could hear her crying to the officer. She was explaining that she was just driving home. She was just coming the same way she had done for the last 12 years. The same route, the same routine. She said she didn't see her at all. She had no time to stop. She had no time to react. And that if she died, then she couldn't imagine being alive anymore. The devastation of knowing that she had killed somebody, even though it was unintentional, was something that was going to destroy the rest of her life. Now, for someone who's in their 70s, who's had a routine, who's done the right thing every time she got out on the road, now will spend the rest of her life second guessing everything she could have done or would have done. If she would have left 5 minutes beforehand, if she would have taken the highway all the way down to another exit, if she just would have taken a different route, or if she didn't go anywhere that night at all. Now, this lady was not a drinker, and she had not consumed any alcoholic drinks. She didn't take any medication. She didn't take any drugs. She was just driving home, and she ended up killing someone. Now, this person was intoxicated. She was in her late 20s, and she was drunk. Now, people who are intoxicated cannot determine distances of vehicles driving. Their depth perception is off. So she walked into the only car that was on the roadway that night. She may have thought that this lady was further away than she was and thought that she could make it. But the decision to drink and then stumble into a roadway destroyed 2 lives. I don't speak ill of the dead. It's just completely inappropriate. And something has happened that is absolutely irreversible. But I'm pleading with those out there to be more responsible with the things that they do. Because something so simple, like too many drinks, can end in 2 lives being completely destroyed. Thanks for listening, and I appreciate you subscribing to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.